This is the first time I've actually used this mic in the car, so it's also operating as a little bit of a test just to see if it's gonna work well. I believe it will. It works well in all the other scenarios that I've used it in, but the proof's in the pudding, as they say. Good morning and welcome. My name is James Cook. Let's vlog. And today I'm probably not going to talk about anything particularly to do with EVs, and I just wanted to have a little sort of an update on where I want to take the channel in the future and why. So I just dropped Jasper off at his mum's house. He was over for the weekend, which is always lovely, and I am now going to try and find my main shooting camera because I have lost it. Yeah, I've put it down somewhere. I think I've probably taken it off my belt because I have it in a little pouch normally so that it's easily to hand. And I think what's happened is I've taken it off in a toilet somewhere and left it. So I've got a few places to go visit, see if I can recover it. And if I can't, then I'm going to go to Curry's and get myself a replacement, which I don't want to do, but I don't really have a choice because I need that camera. It's like literally the camera that I use for everything, except for in car shots and action shots, which I tend to use this camera for. So I have always been interested personally in the future of technology, where it's going, especially if that's not an immediately obvious thing. So, for example, that's basically why I was particularly into electric vehicles. In the past, I've been particularly into Linux, actually, as a computer operating system, because I felt it was the future. And I mean, admittedly, I was hoping it was going to do really well on the desktop, and it didn't do well on the desktop and still hasn't. But it has done incredibly well as a phone operating system and as a embedded Internet of Things style operating system. I'm also particularly interested in SpaceX and the future of space exploration for the same reason, because it's, you know, something to do with the future. I'm very interested in artificial intelligence. That's another one of my key interests at the moment. Lots and lots of really fascinatingly interesting things going on in the world, and I just can't help but want to talk about them. The only slight difficulty for me personally is initially the channel was very much more focused on EVs because EVs were much more of a question mark. And the problem now is I really don't feel like, I feel like EVs are basically a foregone conclusion. I think, you know, it's going to be 90% of all cars sold will be EVs in a relatively short space of time. So I don't really need to push that to try and help make it happen, because it's going to happen anyway. That said, doesn't mean that I'm not still interested in electric vehicles. I think they're great. So there's still going to be a fairly hefty amount of that. And apart from anything, one of the things that I definitely do try to do with my channel as much as possible is chronicle my ownership experience long-term, like properly long-term in an EV. So I've started out in a Nissan Leaf. I had about 2.5 years in one of those. Then I bought this car, which was 7.5 years ago. This is a Tesla Model S 85, one of the original rear-wheel drive pre-autopilot cars, so a proper classic, and I've loved it for the last 145,000 miles. I hope to do as many more miles as I can possibly squeeze out of it. I hopefully will be able to share that ownership experience, you know, the sort of second half of owning it, because the thing about like an expensive EV is you save money by driving it, but it costs a lot of money to buy up front. So I feel in particular with EVs, the long-term ownership is something which is, you know, very much of interest. Oh, I've got a Tesla Model 3 in front of me. Yeah, they are everywhere now. I've seen countless Model 3s already this morning. Don't see a lot of Model X's or S's particularly, but 3s, they're everywhere. And I'm very interested to see how the Model Y does. I think that's going to be a real hot seller in the UK, as it is in many other territories around the world. We always get everything last in the UK because of our silly we have to drive on the left and the steering wheel has to be on the right nonsense. I mean, why we can't be like most of the rest of the planet, I have no idea. So yeah, that's what's going on. Got to go get myself this new camera or find my old one, hopefully. I've already rung a few places that I've been to over the week, because basically I last used it, I think, on Tuesday. It's just completely dematerialized. I have a nasty feeling I'm going to literally find it half an hour after I bought a new one, but that's fine. If that happens, then I can always return the new one, can't I? I hate losing things. I almost never do, so I'm not very well practiced at how you're supposed to handle this sort of trauma. So let's get this drive done and get back up to Milton Keynes, up the M1. Oh joy, what a lovely road. Actually, luckily, the nice thing is it's Monday morning, so everyone's driving towards London and I'm driving away from London. So hopefully I will not encounter horrific traffic. Fingers crossed. Before I get to my first stop, which is the Tesla service centre in Milton Keynes, I just thought I'd talk briefly about Elon Musk and his billions. So he's just done a Twitter poll, which he says he will honour the results of, and basically he was asking, should he sell 10% of his Tesla stock, which is worth approximately $21 billion, something like that. So it's a lot of money's worth. And the poll said yay, although not by a huge amount. And the reason why this was prompted was because a lot of people have been going on about billionaires not paying their fair share in tax. And the thing for Elon Musk is he doesn't take a salary and he doesn't take any bonuses. And so basically the only remuneration he ever gets from either SpaceX or Tesla is in the form of share options. Personally, I think if you're exercising a share option, then I think that should probably be taxed, if it isn't anyway. But other than that, if the shares just go up in value but you don't sell them, then you don't pay tax on it. So he said he'd sell 10% of his Tesla shares, which would obviously generate a pretty hefty tax bill for the US government, which everyone seems to want him to do. Now, obviously, I think people should be paying their fair share of taxes, but there does seem to be a really big misunderstanding about exactly what a billionaire worth almost 300 billion, what their money is. It's not like cash in the bank. That's not something that he's earned and it just sits in the bank. What it really represents is control over those organizations, SpaceX and Tesla. It enables him to set the direction of the businesses and give them the goals that he wants. And that's quite important to Elon, because for him, it's not about making the money. I mean, at the end of the day, what can a billionaire buy that somebody with 100 million can't? The answer is virtually nothing. And what can somebody with $100 billion buy that you couldn't buy with $1 billion? The answer is absolutely nothing. From a personal point of view, you could buy a whole business or something like that. But if you wanted to, live life and just buy things for yourself, whether it's houses or yachts or whatever, $1 billion is all you need. You will never run out of toys to buy and money to buy them with if you've got that kind of bank balance. Now, as it turns out, Elon Musk doesn't go in for that sort of thing. What he wants to do is build rockets to Mars. And the problem with building rockets to Mars, if you don't own a controlling share in the business, is it's really easy for somebody else to be like, well, I want to make some short-term profit, so let's not do that, let's just launch satellites, or let's not make reusable rockets because that might upset the apple cart and cause our business to not be as profitable in the future. It's this whole sort of concept of corporate greed, when businesses are not actually producing the best product or service they can, because if they did, it would either cost them more or they wouldn't make as much money one way or the other. And that, I think, is really reprehensible behavior. Having a better product or service that you could be offering, which you're unwilling to offer, because it'll cause problems for you down the line. And we saw this a lot with EVs, actually. Many what are now EV manufacturers, but originally just produced internal combustion engines of one flavour or another, many of them were very hesitant to move towards electric vehicles because they were worried that the servicing would, the lack of servicing requirements for EVs would end up costing them lots and lots of money in terms of parts and the rest of it down the line. And that's where they make a huge proportion of their profit. They want to sell parts for twice what they cost when they go into a new car. Or for example, mobile phones. Literally designed to last a couple of years and that's it. But it's not really working in the best interests of mankind, is it? I mean, specifically when it comes to something like SpaceX, I think their rocket business so far has been so successful that it's actually run out of customers without really significantly changing the paradigm of what you can do in orbit. And to achieve that, they're going to need full and rapid reusability, which will then essentially turn it into a sort of airliner to space. And once you've got an airliner that goes to space, then you can really start doing interesting things like building manufacturing plants in orbit and power stations in orbit and great big hotels for tourists in orbit. And you can start sending large quantities of people and things to the moon, which could lead to all sorts of new mining and construction possibilities. Maybe it will never be worth bringing those resources back to Earth, but you will be able to build things in space with them, and that would be a vastly more efficient and better way of doing it than building those things on Earth and then launching them, which obviously would require a massive rocket, not to mention also requiring lots of resources from planet Earth. While we're on the subject of space as well, I mean, at the risk of being on my high horse, the thing about space is if we can conquer space, then we can handle whatever this planet throws at us. Elon Musk is quite right. Making life multiplanetary is a good idea, because it would be a terrible, terrible shame if we didn't take that opportunity and then in 100, 1,000, 10,000 years' time, we ended up failing as a species, not making it, not surviving, not leading to anything more significant than some crumbling ruins that there's nobody around to even know ever exist. I mean, it's just deeply depressing. That's not the future I think we're all hoping for. And that's why I think SpaceX is so awesome, and that's why Elon Musk is so keen to make sure he's kept control of it. It's one of the reasons why he doesn't want to do an IPO for SpaceX, is because he's worried that the desire of shareholders to make a short-term profit will get in the way of building great big stainless steel rockets that there isn't really a market for yet. He's hoping he can create that market, and quite possibly he can. After all, he more or less created the market for EVs. Back when Tesla started, nobody wanted EVs. Everyone was making jokes about, milk floats. Actually, they're fantastic, and they do they can make a big difference. Obviously, there's lots of ancillary industries which need to pull their socks up if we want EVs to really reach their potential, because it would be best if we didn't use loads of fossil fuels to power the construction of EVs. It would be good if we made sure we recycled materials and valuable resources as effectively as possible. But going back to space, those are some of the things that having a really decently developed space industry can fix, because when you're in space, actually just making a new one is oftentimes much harder than fixing the old one or using the resources from something else to make your new one. And there you go. So industry spends a proper amount of time and energy solving those problems, and then that technology hopefully will find applications on Earth to make life better for everyone. That's how I feel about it. Yeah, I mean, it's great that Elon Musk is going to end up paying some tax from this share sale if he does it, but at the same time, it's not really what I want to see from him. He's a real visionary, and I want to see his vision of the future come to fruition, which will only happen if he's actually doing it, I think, because if his sort of visionary view of the world was common, then I think we'd already have fully reusable rockets and we'd already be driving EVs. And I mean, I don't know about the future of Neuralink, and I don't know about the future of the Boring Company. I think, you know, both are a good idea. The Boring Company in particular, I think, will be overtaken by the fact that making things fly is going to end up being easier than digging big tunnels. You see, the problem with digging big tunnels is it takes a lot of power, energy and time to dig a big tunnel, and there's a limit to how much technology can make that process quicker, easier and cheaper. However, making a car fly is just an engineering problem and a science and technology problem, and once you've got that product, then you can just run them off a production line and use them. No tunnels required. So, but you know, flight is obviously very tricky, certainly an awful lot trickier than just traveling down a tunnel. Right, speaking of traveling, I am arriving at Tesla and my camera is running out of power, which is not good because this is the only camera I've got. Fingers crossed for finding that camera. Fingers crossed for finding a parking space. Well, that was annoying. It's not here. So I now need to go and have a look at the next place I might have put it. Well, I've checked everywhere I can think of to check and no dice. So that means I need to get a replacement, and then if the old one somehow materializes, I'll have to stick it on eBay, but I really can't think where it is. Can I just say though, although I find the road network in Milton Keynes boring and without a sat-nav very confusing because every roundabout and road seems to look the same, there is something to be said for being in the middle of a large town stroke city, and yet most of the roads around here are 70-mile-an-hour speed limit roads. It's just, I mean, that is kind of bonkers. So here we are, right smack bang next to all the shopping centres and everything else, and I'm doing 50, and I could be doing 70, but there's no point because there's a roundabout coming up. But yeah, I mean, it is a marvel of good road design, even if that doesn't necessarily lead to the most interesting and pleasant roads to drive on. They're a lot more interesting and pleasant for the lack of traffic jams. Oh yes. So yeah, Milton Keynes traffic system for the win, and now we're pulling into Curry's. Yay, because apparently they've got one in stock, so I can just get it and then use it to finish shooting today's video. I'm not happy about this situation, but what can I do? Just need to remember not to. Basically, I think what's happened is because I attach it to my belt usually, because that's a good way to, which way do I want to go? I don't want to go that way, I'll go this way. Yeah, usually what I do is I attach the camera to my belt, and because it's in a pouch on my belt, it's kind of awkward to go to the loo. So I have a tendency to take it off and put it down while I'm, you know, doing my nature's called. And the problem with that, of course, is sometimes I forget to pick it up. And I'm pretty sure that's what's happened this time. No point crying over spilled milk or lost cameras. Okay, so I've got the new camera and it works, and I still haven't found the old camera, which is really deeply irritating, but you know what? I just need to move on from this and not look back. So that's what I'm going to do. Speaking of moving on, it's time for me to say goodbye. I'm at home, I've got tons of editing to do now, and yeah, so I'm going to crack on with that. I hope you've all enjoyed today's video. If you have, remember to leave a like and share it and subscribe if you haven't already. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter if you'd like. There are links in the description. I want to say a big thank you to my Patreon supporters as always, because you guys are awesome. And I will see you all in the next episode of my vlog. Bye. But I'll get over it. My brother is always losing things. He's like excellent at it. So, yeah. But no, it's not something that comes naturally to me. Right, just trying to think. Is there anything else I want to say as I'm waffling along down the road? Nope, I don't think so. I think I've covered it all for now.